Greetings, Crusaders. How y'all doing today? Yeah, it's been so yeah, so this came out of the blue. Just Bandai Namco, owners of the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. Well, owners of Sunrise, who are owners of the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, come out of nowhere and just like, hey, guess what? Gundam tabletop wargame. Yeah, it's called Gundam Assemble, and from what we can tell from what they've shown us, it is a hex-based tabletop war game in the same vein as, like, say, BattleTech. And it's got the set plastic miniatures that you will be assembling, painting, having fight each other. The miniatures are mobile suits and other weapons and vehicles from the Gundam universe. It is it's going to cover multiple Gundam universes. The Universal Century, which is like the core Gundam universe, the main and original one, along with alternate universes, like as pictured. There's recognizably there's pictured Gundam Wing and Gundam Witch from Mercury. Pretty sure there's Witch from Mercury. Might be Reconquista and G. I can't pronounce that stuff, but you get the idea. Multiple universes of Gundam being turned into hex-based tabletop minis for the purpose of a war game. It is a war game, and this was announced recently, fairly out of the blue. I don't recall any rumblings of this happening, but it's interesting to me because the Mobile Suit Gundam setting is a setting that the fact it's kind of like taken this long to get a tabletop game is, to me, a little odd, but I can kind of understand why. Japan doesn't really do tabletop gaming like the West does. It doesn't. I mean, it has a infinitesimally small scene for BattleTech, and it has a larger but still not terribly massive scene for Warhammer 40K that, funnily enough, Imperial Guard being the top favorite over there instead of Space Marines, but that's besides the point. More to the point, though, the thing that the thing that is, like, I don't think people are really realizing with this game is that if you have played Warhammer, you have been at any given time within approximately 10 feet of a Gunpla kit. Gunpla being the name for the Mobile Suit Gundam model kits. And I don't think anybody's really talking about how this game could actually pose a threat to Games Workshop and its dominance over the tabletop gaming scene. I mean, I know people are like, well, I don't really think Games Workshop could be toppled. Their Games Workshop they are not too big to fail. They are not too big to fail at all. In fact, back in 2016, during the darkest years of Games Workshop as a company, when 40K was floundering, Warhammer Fantasy Battles had been, put out to pasture by Games Workshop, and Age of Sigmar fell in its face. Star Wars X-Wing by Fantasy Flight Games was the top game. They were outselling Warhammer 40K, GW's top game, by a good clip. They were on top, and eventually that went away, of course, because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I never pretend to know everything, but I'm fairly certain Fantasy Flight Games stopped production of their Star Wars games because, as Disney's want to do, they can't ever be fucked to renew a license they give out to anyone. So, I mean, that's why, 40K ultimately got the title back, on top of the fact that, it put out 8th edition, which attracted a lot of new people, because it was more approachable than the incredibly obtuse disasters that were 6th and 7th. As for Age of Sigmar, well, that never recovered, so that's besides the point. But what I don't think people realize here about Gundam Assemble is that ultimately Bandai Namco don't really need to do much when it comes to releasing this game. Bandai Namco is a company that basically dominates the model building scene in Japan. They know all about building model kits. They know all about designing model kits. They know all about distributing model kits. They've been doing this longer than Games Workshop as a company has existed. The Gunpla scene in Japan is massive. And I'd argue it's fairly even potentially to Games Workshop's market dominance in the West as well. I'd say the only reason, they don't step on each other's toes is because at the end of the day, Gunpla is more traditional model kit building, where Warhammer 40k is focused on gaming. And now all of a sudden, Bandai Namco has decided to walk up to the wargaming scene, kick the door in, and say, hey, here we are. We're doing war games now. And it's not just going to be like, it's not just going to be, the fact that, see, look, Warhammer 40k is not in a good spot right now. I think 10th edition is fine enough. I won't pretend people are happy with it, like, for a minute. On top of, like, all the the controversies going on with the female custodians, and then, trying to retcon female custodians back out. Not that, the people they're catering to or that are believing it right now, but that's besides the point. Is the fact that, on top of that, you've got all the fuck up with the Death Watch. And now, and I'll be doing a video on this later, they've decided to fuck up Imperial Guard too. It's just, they've been, 10th edition, while they've been trying to make it work, and they've been doing okay at it, it has been a major case of, two steps forward, 5 steps back every time they do something. I wouldn't put 40k in the same dire position it was in 2016, by comparison. But I would say that right now, the last thing GW needs is a competitor, especially a competitor with a larger amount of cultural relevance than Warhammer and better pricing. Because, like, don't misunderstand me. This is simply objective. Gundam has more cultural relevance than Warhammer 40k does. When you tell somebody, when you use the word mecha with somebody, Gundam enters their brain, whether they've watched Gundam or not. They've got that dominance over the genre, over that branch of military science fiction, in a way that Warhammer does not. GW is branching out into television and getting their, video game, licensing under control to make actual good games because they want that amount of cultural relevance. But Games Workshop doesn't have that cultural relevance. And on top of the fact that, Bandai Namco really is already experienced with model production, there's also the simple fact of pricing. Because, I mean, let's be real with ourselves here. The value to, the price to box value for Warhammer Minis is garbage. We can all agree on this. There is no reason an Intercessor kit needs to cost $62.50 American. Meanwhile, a high-grade Universal Century, Gundam kit, essentially the equivalent of what a Intercessor squad would be to commonality for Gunpla, is $13 for the same amount of plastic and similar mold quality. And the best part is, the one I've got screen capped here isn't even a particularly good one. Like, this isn't even a particularly good kit. You can search Gunpla yourself if you want. The prices for Gunpla are actually fairly shockingly good value. Like, you're spending half of what it takes to get a, leader character in Warhammer 40k. And then, to get, your most basic unit for Space Marines cost you like 5 times as much, 4 or 5 times as much, is frankly ridiculous. And Games Workshop only gets away with this pricing because of their market dominance. And I mean, yeah, Gunpla kits can get expensive. The difference is that when you buy a expensive high-grade kit, you're getting, you're basically what you're paying for is the equivalent amount of plastic to a Land Raider kit. But, you're also paying for like the fine details and all that stuff, and it still comes out to less than a fucking Land Raider at $115. And like, and I mean, don't fool yourself. It absolutely is the same the same amount of plastic, give or take, for a much more detailed kit that is already colored. You don't need to paint it. And it's mostly, from what I've gathered with my own experience with Gunpla, it's mostly snapped together. So that it's easier to assemble too. And you can absolutely believe Bandai Namco is going to bring that philosophy to Gundam Assemble. So you've got the cultural relevance, you've got the experience in the model kit industry, and you've got, extremely competitive pricing already with the Gunpla kits. Now they're making that a war game. To say that it will probably be more approachable than Warhammer 40k, even with the fact you have to paint the Gundam Assemble kits, is an understatement, especially at this time when Games Workshop ain't doing so hot, with all of their, with the controversies and everything else. And then this is of course, to say nothing about BattleTech. Poor BattleTech. I mean, BattleTech is already, is a footnote right now in the hobby industry. It was once the top dog, and now it's floundered. It's barely keeping its nose above the sand at this point. It is a dying franchise that has managed to claw back a little bit of relevance due to the Warhammer Plus controversy a couple years back. They now have to compete with Gundam on the tabletop scene. And I know what a lot of you all might say. Well, they'll just play both. And well, here's the problem though. BattleTech, well, specifically Catalyst Game Labs, who print BattleTech, treat their customers like shit. They treat their customers like shit. They beg for money on Kickstarter to get anything made. And then, on top of this, they took what little goodwill they had and torpedoed it with, honestly, I'd argue they've gone more woke than Dungeons and Dragons right now, and that is saying something. BattleTech is essentially shot off both feet, both arms, and it's asking someone to pick up the shotgun and aim it at their head. Okay, the BattleTech is doing poorly right now. Its fans are mad, at the woke bullshit, and on top of that, I mean, not only are they begging for Kickstarter money, they're producing some of the worst miniatures as a result, and the controversies for BattleTech are, piling up faster than the controversies for Warhammer. So I'm sorry, but you can't not convince me that with, Bandai Namco choosing to enter the ring with Gundam Assemble, they are going to pose a serious threat to Games Workshop in its current state, and Catalyst doesn't stand a chance. This is going to, I honestly believe if they can do competitive pricing and good rules, this will shake up the scene to a degree that maybe, hopefully, Games Workshop gets off its ass and starts looking at its pricing. But, we'll have to wait to see that happen. I firmly, though, believe it will. And with that, that has been my rant for the day on Gundam Assemble. This is Marshall Bohemond. I hope you all have a good day, and take care out there. Later.